Station 51, engine 27, engine 32, truck 105.
You're listening to The Fire Break with Steve Wolf. Welcome back to The Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. As you know, The Fire Break is sponsored by Team Wildfire, working to put out the fires, not to measure them, look at them from space, smell them, sniff them, make phone calls about them, actually put them out. So, wish us luck on that because it's necessary. And we're going to do it even without the luck, right? Because founders can't count on luck. A lot of sweat goes into it. Someone who knows about foundering, Jonathan Parfrey, is with me. Is it Parfrey or Parfrey?
Parfrey.
Parfrey, okay. Go with your first instinct, right? Jonathan Parfrey. And Jonathan is the founder of an organization called Climate Resolve in Los Angeles, California, a place seldom associated with positive climate, struggling with the consequences of their own climate decisions, as well as those that are inflicted back on them by nature. Jonathan, welcome to the Fire Break. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Nice to make your acquaintance.
You bet. What are you working on?
We're working on a lot of things. In Los Angeles, as you might know, we're a megalopolis and we draw on resources from across the American West. But there are some things that we are trying to innovate on that can be really exciting for not just the West, but for the rest of the globe. And so one of our biggest initiatives right now that I'm really excited about is this concept of negative solar forcing. And
negative solar sourcing. Forcing, okay.
So the climate scientists, they call the climate change effect solar forcing, which is when the sun strikes the earth and it then converts into infrared energy. And the infrared heat rises into the atmosphere and it gets rebounded back to Earth by various greenhouse gases in the atmosphere.
Right.
That dynamic is called solar forcing. Negative solar forcing is when the sun strikes the Earth, but it isn't converted into infrared energy, into heat, but instead it stays in a spectrum of the electromagnetic band that then sends that radiation right back into space. So if we're gathering
polar ice caps, for instance, right?
The ice caps are a perfect example. You have that bright white ice that the sunlight strikes it, it goes right back into space. But what if we were able to, in the way that we simply build our cities, the way we have our asphalt roads, the way that we have our asphalt shingled roofs, the way that we have our dark sides of buildings, what if instead we were able to send that solar radiation into space and quantify it as to its carbon dioxide equivalence? And so that is an area that we are currently investigating, and we think it has a lot of potential. So some people talk about this dynamic in terms of geoengineering, where they're putting sulfur into the atmosphere or putting mirrors in space as a way of blocking some of that.
A giant parasol around the Earth, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
but why go to those extremes if there are things that you can do in your own built environment that make things better? You're up in the mountains, you know that if you have a dark colored roof, it absorbs that sunlight and it makes your home a little bit more comfortable in the winter time. And in the same way, it works the opposite in the summer. So if you have a dark colored roof, it absorbs that solar radiation and it penetrates into the home. Our idea is working on something called cool roofs, cool pavements, cool walls, as a way of, again, sending that solar radiation back into space.
I see.
That's a big thing that we're working on.
That's a huge thing.
Yeah.
So what about the James Bond license plate alternative, where my roof is white in the summer to reflect heat away, and it's black in the winter to help me absorb more heat?
There are researchers at UC Berkeley that have created that very material, where it's dependent on temperature as to what the pigment would actually look like on the roof.
It's a mood ring roof.
It's there in the lab
Okay.
today, but it is not commercially available just yet.
So it's like a mood ring, right? When it when it's really hot, it turns white, and when it's really cold, it turns dark.
I'm going to steal that from you. Thank you.
Okay, mood ring roof material.
Mood ring roofs.
Okay,
That's it.
I love that.
Are you in marketing, Steve?
I am.
Okay.
Every founder's in marketing, or they're out of business, right? So, okay, so that's huge, right? Provide
That's a
more urban
really big
surfaces that,
initiative.
yeah.
We focus in on extreme heat. So we've worked with various cities and with various companies to do experiments. So we worked with the city of Los Angeles to move something called a cool roof ordinance, where we increased by the building code the albedo, the reflectivity of the roofing materials. And so I'm happy to report between LA City and LA County, there's over 100,000 cool roofs that have come into
Wow.
existence in the last 10 years. So I
Wow.
know we're big bad LA and it's sprawly and it's a mess, but we have 100,000 cool roofs in LA.
That is
So
amazing.
yeah. And
Okay.
so it doesn't get talked about much, it doesn't get heralded, but there are these really interesting interventions that we've been part of. We also experiment with cool pavement in this one neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley called Pacoima. It abuts the San Gabriel Mountains. And in Pacoima, we were able to lay down 10 square blocks of this material that's called Street Bond. It's by a company called GAF. And then we went and did a experiment where we had instruments off the side of a electric golf cart, and we measured the air temperature, the surface temperature, actually the air temperature at different meters. We looked at the albedo effect, and and we also had weather stations both in that area as well as in a control area. And the study is now published. And I'm happy to report that those just having a cool street uh, is around 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit of cooling in for air temperature in that particular area over the control area. And that's kind of an interesting takeaway that there are just things that we can do in our physical environment that can protect lives. And as I discussed earlier, can send solar radiation into space, kind of getting at the heart of the climate issue in the first place. So we like those two for one projects that we think could be very exciting.
And simple, and really drives
Yeah.
home, like, the best way to solve many of these problems is from a physics and chemistry approach.
Yes.
Long before it has to become a political issue and a bill and a carbon
Oh,
credits and all this other crap.
oh, 100.
It's just like paint crap white and it doesn't get so hot. It's
We've moved some legislation in the California legislature. So you're talking about policy. The bills that we've moved have gotten 100% Democrat and Republican votes. It doesn't have to
wow.
be contentious if you make sure that you're listening to everybody and you're putting into the legislation the things that provide benefit for rural communities, for urban communities, for people of every socioeconomic stripe. If you're taking care of them, then there's no problem. So, I know that there's incredible political divisions right now. As an organization, we try to overcome those.
What about solar panels that they're putting, millions and millions of square feet of black solar panel?
It's funny you should mention that. There is a study out of Sydney, Australia. I don't know if you know, but 25% of the buildings in Sydney have photovoltaic panels on them. And they did find a signal that those panels are contributing to what's called the urban heat island effect
Yeah.
to some degree. If they have like a 20% efficiency, which is around what they can do, that means that they're absorbing 20% and 80% is being emitted, and some of that as heat as well. So it's our view that the best thing to do is to have a cool roof with something called a bifacial solar panel. So the sunlight, you're gathering the electrons coming in, and as it reflects out as well.
yeah, like deer's eyes. Right?
Again, you're marketing for me. Thank you.
Well, when you look at certain animals, right, that are very efficient on their use of light, right, you see the reflection, the headlights reflecting out of them, right? It's and they're catching that light and making use of it on the way in and on the way out. Uh, I don't know that impacts global temperatures at all, but it certainly
It,
helps them see at night better.
in terms of deer's eyes, I don't know if that is significant enough to have an impact on sunlight, but when it's on a rooftop, you get the best of both worlds.
So okay, so the white roof thing, super obvious, super simple. You could demonstrate it to a 5-year-old with two pieces of paper out in the sun, right? So
And it depends on the
right,
climate zone you're in. Like,
sure.
if someone is at Lake Tahoe, there is no way I'm going to advocate for a cool roof that's mandatory. I like your idea of how it would switch the mood ring lighting for those areas because it does get warm in the summertime. Or areas, let's say in California around Eureka that are on the coast in the northern northwest corner of the state, Crescent City. Yeah, they're in a climate zone where arguably maybe there wouldn't be a benefit to having a cool roof. But there's like 90%, or like where 95% of the state lives, yes, there would be an enormous benefit.
Yeah,
But
and
you have
it's
to be
not hard,
careful.
right? You can use just white elastomeric compounds for rolling on the roof, and then you get waterproofing and sun rejection at the same time.
Well, there are different standards for what they call,
How white is white?
steep slope roofs, and
Yeah,
then there's different standards where they call like flat roofs. And the flat roofs can have a higher solar reflectivity than ones that could potentially cause glare and be a distraction to folks.
right. The pilots will be complaining, right?
I want to make sure everyone's happy.
Wow. Well, you did it with the Dems and the reps on the first one, so if you continue that out,
So I know that
what else?
you guys work on Wildfire,
Yeah.
and we have been very much involved in that subject. You know, at Climate Resolve, our theory of change is that we acknowledge that climate change is a global phenomenon. It kind of doesn't matter if the emissions come out of a tailpipe in downtown LA or in Boulder or in Dubai. It kind of doesn't matter. It's going into this commons, the
Yes.
global atmosphere, and behaves as such. So what we want to do, though, is what can we actually tangibly get done? And we can tangibly get things done at the local level. And that interests us. We feel that if we're able to show that we're meeting this challenge, that we are doing the right things, then the public might then go, well, these guys did the right thing when it came to my home. My home is cooler with this cool roof. My neighborhood's cooler because of these cool pavements. Maybe I could trust them on some of these other matters as well.
Right.
So we believe that you got to prove it. You got to start. And this kind of runs counter to a lot of the other climate activists that are out there that are kind of creating policy by foie gras. They're kind of forcing it down and making it happen. And we want to prove it out, gain people's confidence, and that we are doing right with the taxpayer money, et cetera. So one of the things that we did is that we looked at some local wildfires. I happen to have grown up in the city of Malibu, and you may not know that city well, but it was visited by some really significant wildfires in the past, and especially the Woolsey Fire in 2018 was significant in that area. Uh, when I was there, my family moved from sort of a city part of LA out to Malibu. And I was just a kid. It's 1970, 71. And there was this huge fire that came through, and we had to evacuate. So like we moved there, and a month later we had to like take off in the family car to get away from the fire, thinking that maybe all of our belongings would be gone. So I'm very well aware of of the, chaparral ecosystem that we moved into that would regularly have fires. We were very fortunate in 1971, nothing happened. But anyway, our report that we came out on the Woolsey Fire, it's on our website at Climate Resolve. It's called Lessons from the Woolsey Fire. And the thing that we did is that we started with an assumption because we had just seen what happened with the campfire in the town of Paradise and the surrounding townships that were there, and the horrible devastation. And people were talking about this concept of receiving communities. And I don't know if you've heard that before, but after there's a wildfire, people get out of there, like as I had to do as a kid, and go somewhere else. And what happens to those places? Do they have the ability to absorb the refugees? Do they have the ability, or displaced people? Do they have the ability to provide services for those displaced people? Are we just leaning super heavy on Red Cross and no one else has to think about it? We wanted to answer those questions. And so we started with a thesis, which was those receiving communities would be burdened by the people going there. And guess what? We were wrong.
Right.
Isn't that crazy? It's so counterintuitive. You'd think that...
I mean, more people, more labor force, more consumers, more tax base, more rising home prices, all the things that are markers of progress.
Exactly. So like what we found in our research, and it's in our report, I encourage anyone who wants to look at it to go look at it, is that, like the city of Chico, they ended up with a $7 million tax revenue bump that they were not expecting. They just weren't expecting it. And so they had more resources in that way. In the same way, when the Woolsey Fire happened, a lot of people went out to the Conejo Valley, which is just sort of northeast of the city of Malibu. And they ended up getting more students enrolled in their schools. And I don't know if you know this, but the more students you have, the more federal dollars that just automatically come in. It's on like per student per capita. And so they were getting more revenue. As you said, there's sales tax, more people are buying stuff, so the sales tax is increased. Were there upward pressures on property values and property taxes? That was a little hard to tell. It appeared to remain stable. In the city of Malibu, conversely, they had an enormous drop-off of the student population. And I think the high school saw like 45% of its students just gone overnight.
Wow.
And I think that had a real financial hit for them. There were 300,000 essentially displaced people from the Woolsey Fire. That's a big number.
Yeah, it is.
And so when you're thinking about, Los Angeles and Ventura County, where people were leaving to, you were thinking like, wow, how can you absorb 300,000 people? Guess what happened? They got absorbed. It's just like they had the Red Cross set up 4 evacuation centers. And with 2 of them, they saw a few hundred people. But with one of them, they saw like a dozen. The last one, they didn't see a single family taking advantage of that emergency evacuation center. People either through Airbnb, which happened to be actually providing free services to try to connect people up. The city of Santa Monica, which is the city neighboring to the south of Malibu, was doing all these services for folks to try to get them into hotels and whatnot. And so there's something on the order of, I think, 175,000 hotel rooms in the Southern California area. And so the thing that really is just the most shocking statistic is that when the people were leaving, there were still vacancies in these hotel rooms. With 300,000 people leaving from one area, there were still vacancies in hotel rooms, which I thought was kind of shocking.
Well, they had nearby family and friends and support system. But I imagine that the impact on a receiving community
Yeah.
is very different if you get, a few 100,000 people from Malibu versus a few 100,000 people from Nicaragua, right?
It,
That like,
I agree with the assumption that in this instance, that these people are very well healed. There's not a lot of poverty, and they had resources to and relationships. The social cohesion and the social connections of the people who were displaced, pretty damn good.
right.
Imagine if it was, and we have some low income communities that are in wildfire zones. Imagine if the same number of people were displaced, it could have been a very different picture. I would make the assumption it would be a different picture, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
And
well,
so it
having
would,
found one assumption overturned, now you're more
yeah, yeah,
right.
we
Yeah.
we came in with this theory that it would be a hardship, and it wasn't. It ended up being a boon, which is kind of an interesting an interesting realization. So I don't know if that would be of interest to the folks in
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
your podcast viewership, but we thought that was super interesting. The other thing is that we assumed that people would want to stay close from where they were living previously. And I think that was borne out by the data. We accessed Facebook's data for good. I don't know if you're
No,
familiar with
I'm
this,
not. That sounds
but through social media, people may not want to know this, but it could kind of track where you are. And so and so we were using that as a means of understanding where people fled to and how long they stayed there. And for the most part, people stayed close, uh, which was a little different than the campfire, where people they the city of Chico could only accept so many people. They were at 100% capacity. There were people who went south to Oroville. There were people who went south to Sacramento. And then there were people who just gave up and they just scattershotted across the United States from the
they went
camp.
to Texas,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So for some people, it was just a little push that they had been complaining about the taxes and the this and the that and the earthquakes. And like, finally, okay, they forced our hand. Now we're getting out of this place.
Conceivably.
For some of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but the thing about the tracking the social media is that you find out, where people went, but Facebook only maintains that after an incident for 90 days. So
Oh,
in terms of, short-term recovery, you get a pretty good picture of where people end up. In terms of longer-term recovery and how long it takes people to rebuild in these areas,
yeah, years.
that was an intro. We don't have data for that. We just have anecdotal sort of information.
So
It,
just based on the value that you described of that information, and knowing like here in Boulder where the Marshall Fire 2 years later people are still rebuilding, so we don't know how many people are coming back. Would you be in a position to get Facebook to make that data available for longer?
we've asked,
Okay.
and it appears that we didn't follow it up candidly, but we did suggest to them that hanging on to that data for a longer period might make sense and to still track it. But it's called, Facebook Data for Good. If people are interested to follow up with Facebook, it's right there. It's really interesting. One of the areas that we were looking at too was thinking about new kinds of insurance products.
Mhm.
We were thinking about, we heard that there were really good insurance companies that came on the scene after the Woolsey Fire. They were there. They set up shop. They were providing services very quickly to people who had insurance. So there's that thing of ALE, the living expenses for folks, and I people don't realize that there's kind of a limit on ALE. You could run through it, but one of the things that some of the insurance companies did is that they allowed people to use their ALE to put a trailer on the physical property of the damaged home
Oh,
and
interesting.
had people living out of that. And I actually thought that was a kind of interesting innovation, and we kind of applaud that kind of innovation when it takes place. Um,
Were there any stellar performers there that you would single out in the insurance market?
no,
Okay.
no. Um, yeah. When we were also thinking, like, is there a way of getting, you know, uh, people to insure to the actual property value of the home? I'm sure that you found with your fire, people may have had insurance, but it wasn't for the full value of their home. They were underinsured for the fire. And that indeed was the case in a place like Malibu, because some of these homes were built in the 50s, 60s, 70s, before the building codes were up to speed when it comes to some of the, codes related to preventing fire. And so when you're underinsured, that means that you don't have the money to rebuild to today's codes and standards, which is something that people also need to keep in mind. Um, so underinsurance ended up being a very big issue. We also found that there were a lot of unpermitted buildings
Oh, wow.
uh, in Malibu, and so you can't get insurance for those if they're not permitted.
Right.
And so people had like their little ad hoc studio or ADU or whatever you want to call it, part of the house, but they decided, I'm not going to permit that. So it never got insured. So it burned down, and there went a lot of housing for folks, especially for people that were in the service industry. We discovered that when it came to workers, the Malibu fire was really a strange experience for them. There is these unfortunate situations, and the LA Times took these pictures of these guys who were like the farmhands from Latin America, probably Mexico, working in Malibu, and they're bringing the pack animals out in providing them, bringing them to safety on the beach in Malibu, while the owners of that property are on their Range Rovers getting the fuck out. Can I say that?
Yeah. You can say
Getting
whatever
out
you
of
want. Yeah.
there. So there was a little like class thing going on there, which
Yeah.
wasn't too pretty. There was also a day laborer center where people came in and said, "Hey, do you mind if I, pay a couple of these guys to help us?" And so a couple of the guys wearing tennis shoes as day laborers are out there fighting fires without protective gear or anything like that. So it was really kind of fascinating the way that the workers were treated. There were over 500 buildings that burned in this fire. So
Wow.
a lot of those places that the either the day laborers or the housekeepers were living in Malibu, they were gone. And because these people are undocumented, there's no FEMA kind of relief for them whatsoever. They don't even have renter status. So they were in a kind of unusual situation. And there's a foundation that came about in Malibu called the Malibu Foundation. Lovely people. And they kind of focused in on the forgotten people of the fire, not the people
Mm.
without resources. And I thought that was something notable, and maybe could be replicated in other places.
There's probably a lot that goes on behind the scenes that people don't notice. A lot
Yeah,
more suffering than is obvious.
yeah. So one of the things when we're looking forward to, like, how do we like prepare for something like this again? Of course, we always plan for the last disaster, and the new one has stuff that we've never even imagined. But we're human beings. We have to like figure things out. So what could we do? And we were looking as an organization that is an advocacy organization that wants to be helpful. are there things that we can do structurally with our local governance that could make a difference? So we've been talking, and it hasn't really gelled yet, but creating a resilience district for Los Angeles County, and then potentially raising revenue that would go into the resilience district and then be deployed. We like that idea. We like it to be multi-hazard, because if it's just one hazard, then
Yeah.
you're putting all your eggs in one basket in terms of raising revenue, and what happens if something else happens. So we've been looking at that as a possibility. As you know, we do have earthquakes here. You mentioned that. Our big one, where the San Andreas is going to pop, hasn't happened in 150 years in Southern California. They're supposed to pop every 120 years, so it's 30 years overdue. So we're anticipating at some point there's going to be a major seismic event. Just as an aside, most people don't realize that Baja California is the Pacific plate that is ripping off of the North American plate. And so that tear that created Baja California is supposed to go all the way up through the middle of California to San Francisco, creating a very large island in a few million years. But
and twice as much beachfront.
exactly. So we're playing with the idea of a resilience district. There's also something called tax increment financing. This happens all the time, and it's almost completely behind the scenes, and property owners might notice it, they might not notice it. Comes on your property taxes, and there's just one item that says, for schools, that you're paying for local schools. Oh, and then there's the community colleges. Oh, and then there's the sewer line. You hardly notice it. And we're thinking about, like, a city like Malibu. What if they had this tax increment that's on the property taxes? And maybe it's only, $150 a year, or it could be dependent on the size of the lot. There are different ways of cutting it. But you could create a fund that would be then operated by the city of Malibu to go out and help homeowners to clear brush, could help homeowners with fire-resistant materials, help homeowners replace things that would burn in a heartbeat with things that wouldn't burn, help them with those upgrades on their buildings to protect them. I think that's a great idea. And I think having to deal with the other bigger insurance issues right now, and State Farm pulling out of literally, tens of thousands of their customers in California, we have to think big. Playing it safe right now, in my view, is actually putting people in jeopardy. You could be so safe that you do the dumb thing. And
like the prescribed burns, right? We want to be so safe and not light any more fires. Yeah, well, nature's busy adding fuel every spring.
Yeah,
you burn it or not, but you're going to pay the price eventually.
Yeah, 100%. So those are some of our findings from the report that we did, and I think we did a second report on workers specifically due to our first report. And we found that in the Woolsey Fire, there were a lot of agricultural workers in the Oxnard Plain. You might get strawberries in beautiful Boulder, Colorado from the Southern California Oxnard Plain, where a lot of the guys are out in the field, even during the wildfires. And some of those workers, we discovered, don't speak English. They don't speak Spanish. They speak a indigenous, tribal dialect that very few people speak. And this language in particular, of the people who are working in the Oxnard Plain area, there's no written language.
Wow.
It's all verbal. So
Indigenous to where, if I could interrupt?
southern Mexico.
I see. Okay.
And so there had to be communication through radio to tell people about the issues associated with particulate matter from the wildfires and some of the care that would need to be taken. And I think there have been some advances with the local government in Ventura County to be able to do that. And I thought that is an interesting area. You need to do the survey ahead of time to find out how you have to communicate with folks. I would think we were playing with the idea, could there be an insurance product where both the farm owner and the farm workers, when the particulate matter exceeds a certain parts per million, just stay home.
Yeah.
And you're going to get paid.
Just like your heat index issues, right?
Yeah.
That are still being tabled but need to come to the front.
I think it would be an interesting area to explore. Idea. And I think there are insurance companies that are interested in that kind of model. They call that parametric insurance, where if it exceeds a certain amount, it kicks in.
It kicks in.
Yeah,
very interesting. I guess it sounds like your time is equally divided between like working on the projects that are really interesting and thinking about the projects that have yet to be conceived that are equally interesting.
We look for solutions when we see a problem. We want to think, well, what if we did it better next time? And is there a way to prevent the injury from taking place in the first place? Is a question. That's
a cultural thing, right? We're a response country. No money for prevention, endless purse strings for response. Well, maybe you'll have some impact on that.
Well, FEMA does have its pre-hazard mitigation funds, which are supposed to be 10% of all awards to states that have declared disasters are supposed to sink 10% into preventing the next disaster.
I see.
In theory.
Or the consequences of it. I mean, wildfires have the distinction of being the preventable natural disaster, whereas earthquakes, the best you could do is minimize the damage from them.
It's a very good observation. We work so much on extreme heat, we think heat injury is also preventable as well.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Right, with air conditioning.
It can be, but it needn't exclusively be air conditioning.
No, better pavements and better roofs.
I think you're getting, or shade. We like shade.
Yeah.
We like people staying hydrated. You stay hydrated, then your body does its work. Yeah.
So when you talk about dividing the heat load of darker surfaces, if you put the solar panels right up against your house and they get hot, they radiate the heat back to your house. If you mounted them, 6 feet off your roof, now they're still radiating heat, but your house is in shade. Yeah. So there's some trade-offs on that.
Or if you get the kind of bifacial ones, that works.
Yeah. Well, I thought we sent most of our bifacial people to Congress. They have another word for that now. But,
so one of the other areas that we participated in a UCLA National Science Foundation effort was studying the psychological effects of breathing in wildfire smoke.
Oh, wow.
And it was fascinating.
That's huge.
And it's very intuitive. Like in Los Angeles, a few years back, it hasn't happened in the last 2 years, but the summer preceding it did, we had 7 weeks of wildfire smoke in our area. And there is it kind of gets to you.
Yeah.
It's just kind of built into our psyche that we smell that stuff. It's like, that ain't good.
Right. It's nature's waterboarding. like it or not.
What can I do to
it's
get away from that? And what if you can't get away from it? And what does that do to you psychologically? So it was a very, very interesting area of investigation that I think is going to be looked at even more in the future.
Is that study on your website?
No,
Not yet,
no, no.
but you'll put a link to that there.
I can,
If you could, that'd be
I
fascinating.
can send you a link, Steve. Yeah,
Okay, I would appreciate that.
you got it.
Yeah, there's a unique type of oppression sentiment that comes with torments that are unavoidable.
I think it's really interesting too, is that it connects city people with what's happening in a rural area. And this is one of my pet peeves, is that city people don't realize our absolute dependence on the rural reality, that we get our food, we get our water, we get our resources. And there's no, in my experience in downtown Los Angeles, where I'm talking about, very little sense of respect and consideration and gratitude for the resources that come from rural areas. But when you have the wildfire, there it is. There's the connection. Or when the water runs dry, you have that connection. But it almost like takes a disaster for people to get that sense of connectedness. It's a shame.
Yeah, and this is why they say, no good disaster should go, unused.
Right, exactly.
Right? Or never miss it. Yeah, because it really does. It is a time when you have people's attention. When New York City was, blanketed in orange Canadian smoke, that was the first time people there realized, oh, wow, these fires are real. It's not just a West Coast thing. It's not just it's our problem too. And that's, the realization that many countries, one atmosphere. We all share the same atmosphere. We all share the same.
I must confess to some smirking when finally the New York Times goes, oh, this wildfire smoke, it's a thing. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
No shit.
Yeah, exactly. Outside Manhattan, there's a place called the USA.
Yeah, it was kind of hilarious.
Absolutely. Well, Jonathan, I really thank you so much for sharing a little bit about Climate Resolve and the work that you're doing. If folks want to follow up with you or learn more about your organization, or heaven forbid, write a big check to support your work, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
It's climateresolve.org. All one word, climateresolve.org. And you can find me on there under staff. And it's my name, J. Parfrey, at climateresolve.org, if you want to reach out to me individually. But I think the idea of looking for solutions and doing it with some humility and working with people from all different perspectives is the right way of doing it. Absolutely.
I'm on board with you. And I think that, of all of the things that we're testing in climate, testing this solution, testing that solution, you hit the nail right on the head. The one that we have to test most is our resolve.
Thank you.
Because change is difficult and people resist it. So thank you for calling that out, that when resolve is there, everything else falls into place. And until it's there, nothing. So
thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Jonathan. It was really great meeting you and spending some time with you, learning about you. And I suspect we'll be meeting together again to share more topics, because I have a hunch you're into a bunch of really interesting stuff there.
Oh, I get in trouble all over the place.
Awesome. Thank you. You have to, or you're not making progress, right? All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you for joining me, Jonathan. The organization is climateresolve.org. Go check that out. You have been... I used to love this when the Tappet brothers said, you've squandered another hour of your time. Although in this case, not the case. But anyway, thanks for joining us here on the Fire Break. We're sponsored by Team Wildfire, developing innovative physical solutions for actually putting out a fire. Once again, thank you, and we'll see you at the next one. Take care.